200,000 people. If you stood in the center of a modern football stadium, every seat filled, and you multiplied that crowd by 3, you would still be short of the number. It is a figure so large that the human brain struggles to process it. It becomes a statistic, a line in a history book, a rounded-off estimate from a time when records were written by hand and distance was measured in days of camel travel. But on the night of December 22nd, 856 AD, that number wasn't a statistic. It was the population of a nightmare. In the high, arid plains of north-central Iran, there was a city called Qumis. To the people of the Abbasid Caliphate, it was a jewel. It was the capital of a province, a vital artery on the Great Silk Road. It was a place of sophisticated engineering, where water flowed through the desert in hidden underground veins. It was a city that felt permanent. By dawn on December 23rd, the city of Qumis was gone. The earth didn't just shake, it rearranged the definition of the horizon. In less than a minute, one of the most advanced civilizations in the medieval world was broken so completely that the survivors didn't even try to rebuild. They simply walked away. They left the dead where they lay and allowed the desert to begin the long, slow process of burying the evidence. This is the story of the 856 Damghan earthquake, the disaster that erased a capital, and the physics of why the very thing that kept the city alive became the instrument of its execution. To understand how 200,000 people can die in a single night in the 9th century, you first have to understand the geography of the trap. Qumis, or Damghan as we know it today, sits at the foot of the Alborz Mountains. To the north, the peaks rise like a jagged wall, trapping the moisture from the Caspian Sea. To the south lies the Great Salt Desert, the Dasht-e-Kavir, a place of heat and silence. The city existed because of a miracle of ancient engineering, the qanat. A qanat is a gravity-fed water system. Since the desert surface is too hot for open canals, the water would evaporate before it reached the fields. The Persians went underground. They dug vertical shafts into the mountain's water table and then tunneled horizontally for miles, creating a subterranean river. These tunnels were the lifeblood of Qumis. They powered the mills, fed the gardens, and filled the homes of nearly 250,000 people. The logic was simple. The water is protected from the sun. The city is protected from the drought. But here is the part the engineers of the 9th century couldn't see. The same geological forces that created the mountains, the same pressure that pushed the water table high enough to feed those tunnels, was the same pressure that was building toward a collapse. Qumis was built directly on top of the Shahrud fault system. For centuries, the Arabian plate had been pushing north, grinding against the Eurasian plate. The Alborz Mountains are the result of that collision. It is a slow-motion car crash that has been happening for millions of years. Usually, that energy is released in small, unnoticeable increments. A few millimeters of slip. A minor tremor that rattles a tea set. But sometimes, the fault locks. The rock reaches its limit. And when the lock breaks, the energy of 1,000 years of tectonic tension is released in seconds. December 22nd, 856. Midwinter in the Persian highlands. The sun had set hours ago. In the houses of Qumis, families were gathered around charcoal fires. The air was cold and thin. Merchants from China and Rome, who had traveled for months to reach this hub of the Silk Road, were asleep in the caravanserais. The city was a dense labyrinth of sun-dried mud brick and heavy timber. At approximately 11 p.m., the Shahrud fault snapped. The magnitude is estimated at 7.9. To give you a modern comparison, that is the same energy as the 2023 earthquake in Turkey and Syria, or the 1906 earthquake that leveled San Francisco. But in 856, there was no steel reinforcement. There were no earthquake-resistant codes. There was only mud, wood, and gravity. The physics of a mud brick collapse is brutal. Adobe is a fantastic insulator. It's cheap, it's easy to work with, but it has almost zero tensile strength. It can handle vertical weight, but the moment the ground moves laterally, the moment the foundation shimmies, the walls don't just crack, they explode. They lose their structural integrity and turn back into the dust they were made from. When the primary waves hit Qumis, the heavy clay roofs, designed to keep out the summer heat, became massive hammers. They dropped straight down, pancaking the rooms below. If you were in bed that night, you didn't have minutes to run. You didn't even have seconds. The distance between life and death was the thickness of a single wooden beam. If the beam held, you had a pocket of air. If it didn't, you were buried under 3 feet of solid earth before you could even draw a breath to scream. But for those who were outside, or for those who lived in the surrounding villages, the horror was different. Remember the qanats, the underground veins of water. When a 7.9 magnitude earthquake hits a desert floor, it does something called liquefaction. The vibration turns the loose, sandy soil into something that acts like a liquid. The underground tunnels, the qanats, shattered. The water didn't just stop flowing. The tunnels collapsed inward, creating massive sinkholes that swallowed entire blocks of the city. The vertical access shafts, which acted like chimneys for the underground water, became geysers of mud and pressurized air. In a matter of moments, the city's entire survival system was reversed. The structures that brought life to the desert were now burial trenches. The shaking lasted for nearly a minute. In the silence that followed, the city of Qumis was no longer a city. It was a grey, jagged landscape of rubble. The dust was so thick that the survivors couldn't see the moon. They stumbled through the ruins, calling out names into a dark that didn't answer back. The official death toll recorded by medieval historians was 200,000. In the villages surrounding the capital, the destruction was absolute. In some places, the ground had shifted so violently that hills had flattened and valleys had risen. Historians from the period noted that the earth swallowed up villages. But the earthquake was only the first weapon. In the 1986 Lake Nyos disaster, the killer was gas. In the 1923 Tokyo firestorm, the killer was heat. In the 856 Damghan earthquake, the secondary killer was the cold. This was December in the Iranian plateau. The temperature was well below freezing. Those who had survived the initial collapse were now trapped in the rubble or standing in the streets with nothing but the clothes on their backs. The qanats were broken. The water supply was gone. The charcoal fires that had been warming the houses had been scattered into the dry timber and rugs, igniting small fires across the ruins. There was no organized rescue. There was no Red Cross. There was no central authority capable of reaching a disaster of this scale. The survivors faced a choice that was no choice at all. They could stay and try to dig for their families in the freezing dark, or they could walk into the desert. Most did neither. They died of exposure in the ruins of their own homes. The impact of the Damghan earthquake was so profound that it changed the map of the world. Qumis was the capital. It was the administrative heart of the region. After the quake, the city was so shattered, the population so decimated, that the Abbasid authorities eventually gave up on it. The Silk Road, which had flowed through Qumis for centuries, began to divert. Traders moved their routes to avoid the ghost city and its ruined water systems. The capital of the province was eventually moved to Semnan. If you go to Damghan today, you can still see the traces. You can see the ancient mounds where the city once stood. You can see the remains of the qanats, now dry and filled with sand. Geologists who study the Shahrud Fault today look at the 856 event as a benchmark. It is a reminder that the Iranian plateau is a restless place. The same physics that built the Alborz Mountains is still at work. The plates are still grinding. The tension is still building. The tragedy of 856 wasn't just the mud brick or the bad timing. It was the human tendency to mistake the temporary for the permanent. We build cities on fault lines because the fault lines provide the mountains, and the mountains provide the water. We move into the trap because the trap looks like a garden. The engineers of Qumis did everything right based on the science they had. They conquered the heat. They managed the water. They built a masterpiece of civilization in a place where nothing should grow. But nature doesn't care about your trade routes. Physics doesn't care about your architecture. The ground can hold for 1,000 years. It can feel like a foundation. It can feel like home. But the earth beneath your feet is not a floor. It is a lid. And sometimes, the lid moves. Welcome to Geofall.